Why thinking it won't happen to me can leave you unprepared. That's what I want to talk to you about today. Hello. I am Kelly Swingler. It is 11:30 on Wednesday, the 13th of July. It's book launch day, which I'm very excited about. Got things pinging. There we go. Let's get those sorted. But yeah, today I want to talk to you about why thinking it won't happen to me or won't happen to you can leave you unprepared. If you are watching, do feel free to pop a hello in the comment. Let me know that you're there. But I suppose what's prompted this this live today is I've just received a letter through the post. It's just come addressed to our address, no names on it, from a legal firm, and it's basically saying that there was a car accident near our house not that long ago. The individual didn't take out accident cover as part of their insurance. So it's one of these kind of no win, no fee solicitors. Do we have any CCTV from this particular date that might be able to help with this claim and looking for the person that has allegedly caused this accident? And it's kind of got me thinking about prevention, right? This person, basically the letter is saying this person never thought there'd been an accident. They didn't take out any personal injury cover. And I wonder how many of us have done exactly the same thing. I know I have, I know my partner has, I know my sons have done exactly the same thing, right? You're going through your insurance claim and they ask if you want all of these added extras. And we are very quick to dismiss them as like, I don't need that, I don't need that, I don't need that. And some of that I think is this will never happen to me. And at the same time, we're thinking, well, I could be saving myself £2, £5, £10, whatever a month, and therefore I don't need it. Okay. And I've written this morning, I'm gonna post an article tomorrow about what we need to be doing as leaders to really be helping our top performers and our high performers. I was involved on a burnout panel discussion last week. And Lucy, who was one of the panels, just made the best statement ever. I've written similar in the past, but not as blatant as she has, which was basically, lazy bastards don't burn out. And I was like, wow, that's so true. But then a lot of the top performers and a lot of the high performers and the high achievers and those of you that aren't lazy and that are pushing and are at most risk of burnout still never think it will happen to you. All of the messages that I receive will say something along the lines of, I've been watching you for ages, the signs were there for ages, I ignored them, and now this is the situation that I'm in, right? I never thought it would happen to me. And I think this, again, it's a common thing for many of us, right? We never assume the worst is going to happen for us. But the reality is that there is always a first time for everything. And I want to share with you today kind of 9 things really that will help you have a more realistic view to preventative action. My partner and I have got a couple of friends or a couple of different friends that own IT security companies. And a lot of the time when they're doing sales calls, when they're going out to meet people, a lot of the decision makers in the organizations do not think that they need the level of IT security that our friends are offering within their businesses. But what they've learned to do as part of their sales process is demonstrate how easy it is to risk the security of the IT in these organizations to show that the level of security that they're offering is needed. And people buy on the spot because the risk has been really quickly presented to them. And then they decide that they need to take the action. But without being able to demonstrate that there is a risk there, the chances are that they wouldn't get as many sales as they get, right? 9 times out of 10, and I don't know if this has happened to you, right? You need, I don't know how many steps there are with some of our IT security at the minute, but you know, it's like 2-step authentication. You think, oh, it's just going to be a ball ache. And then your Facebook gets hacked or your email gets hacked or your bank account gets cloned or cleared out. And then you think, oh, I need to be upping my security. Right? 9 times out of 10, we wait for something to happen before we see that it can happen to us, before we then start to make the changes. right? Preventative action is much harder to sell because the majority of us think it will never happen to me. I never, ever thought that burnout would happen to me, ever, right? Not in a million years did I ever think burnout would happen to me. And so all of these preventative things that people kept talking to me about, didn't need to do them. I was never going to burn out, right? I was a top performer. I was a high achiever. I knew what I was doing. I felt I was able to manage my stress levels. I thought I could do everything, continuing to do everything to the very, very best of my ability. Was never going to, but I mean, burnout wasn't even really a thing. It was probably being talked about, but, you know, burnout 2013 was when it really, really hit me. I think it was, what was it, 2019, before the World Health Organization actually recognized it as this workplace phenomenon. Right, we were just talking about high stress at that point. And high stress wasn't something that I thought would stop me. For years and years and years, for 22 years, probably 23 years, all of the psychometric and personality tests that I've done over the years have all said is prone to stress, right? This personality type is prone to stress. But I learned to overcome it, and I learned to keep achieving it, and I learned to keep on going. When I talk about burnout prevention, a lot of people say it's never going to happen to me. When I first attended and when I qualified as a mental health first aider, the biggest glaringly obvious issue to me with that was there was nothing in there about prevention. And I really kind of had to think about it afterwards, like, why is this not talking about prevention? It talks about what to do if somebody comes to you with severe depression, severe anxiety, if somebody appears to be suicidal, if somebody is at breaking point. But from my perspective, it was like, you know, it's great that it's being rolled out everywhere, but why are we not talking about the prevention? And that was one of the driving factors that led me to eventually create the world's first mental wellbeing for HR program. Because of the burnout that I'd experienced as an HR director, the burnout that many of my predecessors had experienced, and then the sad death of my replacement, who died in her sleep whilst at a leadership residential. Right, I know this stuff happens, and yet we still continue to think this doesn't happen to us. I have seen people at work who have suffered heart attacks and strokes collapse on stairs because of high stress, but they never thought it would happen to them. Or the warning signs were there and we ignored them. And when it comes to talking to a lot of the corporates that I talk to about prevention, it's kind of a waste of, you know, they see it as a waste of money. Not all of them. I'm working with some amazing companies to help reduce the stress, change the mindset, change some of the working practices, eliminate burnout, or at least stop it progressing to a certain point. But some of the organizations still, well, it's not an issue that we have within our organization. I can guarantee you it will be behind the scenes somewhere. So I want to talk to you today about this thing called optimism bias. Okay, optimism bias, which is really is this thing that happens when we think it will never happen to me. And we can talk, you know, are we being realistic or are we being optimistic, right? When we're not buying this additional insurance, when we're not doing this stuff for ourselves, are we being realistic or are we being optimistic? Or are we just maybe being a bit tight with our money? But there is this thing called optimism bias, and it is a well-known psychological phenomenon that causes us to believe that we are less at risk of experiencing misfortune than others. And then we overestimate the likelihood of positive events from happening. I'll say that to you again. So optimism bias is this well-known psychological phenomenon that causes us to believe, or causes us to believe that we are less at risk of experiencing misfortune than others, and overestimating the likelihood of positive events happening. And we don't need research to show how people dismiss the unfortunate events. And even when it does happen, they refuse to take the necessary steps to prepare, right? We've all seen the news. When it comes to any kind of natural disaster, there are people that remain in their homes because they think the danger or the danger zone won't affect them. We see people heeding the advice and evacuating, only then to need rescuing after. And we watch all of these events happening to others and think that it will never happen with us. And to some extent, that's why we can't cope with them, right? But to be prepared, we must look at all of these possibilities, right? If we think about it, why do you do fire drills in the workplace? Why maybe have you got alarms fitted to your home? Why maybe do you have CCTV, or maybe you've got one of those Ring doorbells, right, for added security and protection? Why maybe do you keep fire extinguishers in your house? Right? We look at it. So in the event of a fire, we're prepared and we know exactly how to deal with it. But because we don't think of our houses as fireproof and then just leave it at that. We don't think of our houses as burglar proof and then just leave it at that, right? We take precautions, we take preventative measures to be able to protect our homes. And whether we're protecting it for ourselves or our tenants or our families, we want to ensure that we've got that protection. And whilst being overly optimistic can give us this false state of invincibility, we of course need to have a balanced view of life, and we need to prepare for most things that can happen to us. So I want to talk to you about these kind of nine strategies, 9 things, 9-point list to help you overcome this optimism bias. Firstly, being an optimist all of the time can be absolutely crippling. We can stay positive, but at the same time, we also need to be realistic. So again, I'm going to come back to burnout on this one. If you are at the point where you're getting exhausted, where your self-care, where your well-being is being pushed into the background or has become completely non-existent, if you're overworking, if you are overthinking, if you're unable to switch off, if it's impacting, if your exhaustion and stress levels are impacting your family life, you need to be realistic about what the outcome of that may be if you do not take the steps now to make the changes. Okay, so the first thing I want you to think about is, by all means, stay positive, but at the same time, you need to be realistic. Secondly, in a lot of cases, like by welcoming stress, we can feel less invincible, and the better we can then cope with unexpected events. So we can welcome the stress to help us feel less invincible. And the better we can then cope with the unexpected events, because we learned that, okay, that could happen. And that doesn't mean we have to be on red alert, high alert all the time thinking this thing's going to happen to me and I don't know what to do about it. But we do need to be aware that these things can happen. And when we begin to feel just that tiny little bit less invincible, then we are more able to be alert and welcome the strategies, the changes that we need to make to keep us safe and well and moving forwards. Thirdly, we need to look at our resilience. And I think resilience for me has always kind of been one of those that I don't always think we know how resilient we are until we're in a particular situation. I think we can build our resilient skills, and some of that may be our self-care, implementing boundaries, having the conversations that we need to have, not allowing stress to accrue, having open and honest conversations with people about what it is that we need to change. So we can be optimistic and we can be resilient and recognize that we are not invincible and immune to some of these things might happen to us. Fourthly, we need to be able to take any kind of misfortune in our stride, right? We need to take things one day at a time, particularly again when it comes to burnout. When we're in it, or when we think we're in it, it's very difficult to think what might happen 6 months down the line. Again, I speak to a lot of people that will say, I'm okay for now because I've got a holiday in 6 weeks' time. I can make it until my holiday. But we just take it one day at a time. What do I need today in order to keep me happy, safe, and well today? What do I need today in order to help me be realistic? And also deal with things at a pace that you can manage, right? There's no other way. It's not about rushing the process. Take one day at a time. We also, if we can, need to think about the information that we need to be comfortable in a particular situation, right? We want protection from feeling more pain. But quite frankly, right, the truth will set us free. No matter how hard it is to hear, speak to people around you, right? Am I seeming stressed? Am I more anxious than normal? Am I snappier than normal? Do you think there's something I need to change? What's the problem? What's the issue? Gather some of that information. Some of it you might not need, but gather the information, speak to people, speak to experts, find out what it is that you need to change. Sixthly, is that even a word? But number 6, learn to lean on yourself. You've got to muster up this inner courage. And sometimes that inner courage is absolutely asking for help. Again, I've put in my article that I'm going to put out tomorrow. There's a Brené Brown video that talks about the difference between kind of perfectionism and overachieving, and how that is masking shame. And again, I see a lot of my clients that feel that having this inner strength or inner courage to ask for help is actually a sign of weakness, and it isn't. So trust yourself, right? Do I need help in this particular situation? Yes, I do. Okay, I'm going to ask for it. The shame that Brené talks about in this link to perfectionism is, what will other people think of me? It's shame about what will other people think of me if I ask for help. I can't ask for help because other people will think I failed. I can't ask for help because other people will think I can't cope. I can't ask for help because this will happen or this will happen. And again, we've got to change that. So we've got to be gathering this inner courage, leaning on ourselves and saying, yes, this is what I need in this particular moment. Sometimes we also then need to be looking at the reality of what's happening around us. We can't just live in our minds to see the reality. Right? We can't just live in our minds. To see the reality, we need to be looking around us. And the research and the data and the statistics and other people within our workplace are at a point of burnout, right? We're at that disaster phase. Looking at what's happening to everybody else can give you that realistic viewpoint that says, this is what it is that I need to change. And in doing that, changing your perception of reality, this is number 8, but changing your perception of reality can motivate you then to change your behavior and outlook. So changing your perception of reality can motivate you to change your behavior and outlook. And number 9 that I want to kind of cover with you today is think back to experiences in the past. Understand that they happened and that they can happen, even though you were confident they could never happen to you, right? Has there ever been a situation where you thought it would never happen to me and then something did, or something similar did? That's proof that this optimism bias of it will never happen to me has probably already happened to you at some point in the past. So I want you to get out of your minds, look at reality, look at the fact that this can happen, balance the difference between the optimism and the positivity, balance the difference between the reality and what's going on within your head, and do something that motivates you to change your behavior and outlook. This can happen to any of us. And I want to kind of leave you with a bit of a quote from Walt Disney, actually, that says, I always like to look on the optimistic side of life, but I am realistic enough to know that life is a complex matter. I'll read that to you again. I always like to look on the optimistic side of life, but I am realistic enough to know that life is a complex matter. Right? None of us are immune to high stress. None of us are immune to burnout. None of us are immune to any of this stuff. We might think we are. And again, I get so many messages from people that say, well, I just never thought it would happen to me. Right? It's happening to all of those people over there, but I'm immune. So this optimism bias is something that we absolutely need to challenge. We can't just assume that we are immune and it's just going to happen to everybody else around us. We've got to make those changes, right? Really make those changes in order to get us to a point where we are able to prevent burnout, not stop it when it happens, not wait for the fire to have started before we start to extinguish it, but literally start to take the steps now to prevent it from happening. And if you're on that path, on the way to burnout, what do you need to change now? Stop thinking it will never happen to me. Stop thinking, what will everybody think of me if I ask for help? Make the changes that are right for you. Be in the moment, take it day by day, look at what it is that you need to do, and then take it from there. I'm going to leave you there for today. I suppose I'm also going to quickly show, I have got, it has been flashing along the bottom, talking about prevention. I've got a 2-hour virtual burnout prevention workshop that I will be hosting next Wednesday, 20th of July, 2 till 4 via Zoom. You will find all of the details on my website, kellyswingler.com/mind the gap. And then also talking about Mind the Gap, I have got my virtual book launch for my book, Mind the Gap, tonight at 6 p.m. via Zoom. But I hope that's been helpful. Optimism bias. We've got to look at the difference between optimism and reality. If you will be at the launch later, I will see you then. If you want to join me next Wednesday, I'd love to have you there. We need to start focusing on this prevention. And really, the whole point of prevention is that we never get to that point in the first place. We never get to that point in the first place. I want to prevent burnout, not continue to keep pushing the point when we're at burnout. I know we can prevent it. I know that it can happen to any of us. It absolutely happened to me. It has happened to many, many, many others. So there's lots and lots of things there. So thank you very much for joining or watching. And I hope to see you again next time. Take care. Bye-bye.